Hello, Louisiana, and welcome to At the Book for NFL Week 3, College Football Week 4. It is September the 23rd of 2021. I'm Zach Ewing with Jim Derry and Devin Jackson, and we are here to get you set for the football weekend to come. And, of course, that all begins tonight with the Thursday night NFL game. It's Panthers and Texans this week, and, guys, it's going to kick off another good weekend of football.
No doubt about it, and I'm looking forward to it, and I've tried to do a little bit more with the NFL so I can try to scrape up towards Devin a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get to our big bucks game later, but Devin may already be so far out in front of the field he's lapping people. At least I had a good week too, so I can still see his taillights, but just barely off in the distance. Devin, was it 7-0-1 or 8-0-1 you went last weekend? That was a heater unlike I've ever seen.
I think it was 7-0-1. I really got close to the one that was a push, but I would straight up won by 23. But
yeah,
but no, I was telling you guys before the show that the UConn game was kind of the difference maker because it was 45-0 at halftime. So I really thought I was out on that one.
I think you had him with 34 points or something like that. And got the late touchdowns. The backdoor cover is brilliant when it happens for you. When it happens the other way around, it's brutal. That is correct. Let's take a look quick at the Thursday night football game, guys, before we get into Cashin in with Carville and our big bucks game. Tonight, as we mentioned, the Carolina Panthers are in Houston looking to go to 3-0. I mean, that's really the story here is that Carolina, we expected Tampa Bay to have a good year, and we'll talk about their game in L.A. later, but Carolina's an 8-point favorite here. And a straight-up win gets them to 3-0. And really, at that point, you've got to start, especially from a Saints perspective, you've got to start talking about them as a playoff contender and an NFC South contender.
Yeah, I mean, you really do. And I like Carolina in this game, but I don't like the fact that Joe Public is all over Carolina because this spread has increased. And obviously, Houston without Tyrod Taylor now, they've got all kinds of problems. They weren't a great football team to begin with, and now they have to play without their quarterback. They don't have much of a running game. Their defense is suspect. Other than that, they're pretty good.
I think Joe Public's all over Carolina, but I think Johnny Sharp is too, because from what I've seen, all the money is on the Panthers, and rightfully so. I mean, Davis Mills is going to win a football game with, J.C. Horn looks like one of the best cornerbacks in football all of a sudden for Carolina. That defensive line was monstrous against the Saints last week. This line, by the way, when Tyrod Taylor the look-ahead line before we knew he'd be injured, I want to say was like Panthers minus 4.5. So it has, and then it was immediately changed to 7.5, and now it's ticked up to 8. I'll tell you what I like here is a teaser, and I don't play a lot of teasers, but if you can get the Panthers down to -1 or -2, and then you pick another game, maybe it's Denver against the Jets or Baltimore, maybe somebody else with a big line. Baltimore against Detroit, and you can tease them down also to 1 or 2 points. You may be in a decent shape there.
Or with the under, Zach. Because if you get the under up to 49, I don't think this game's going over 49 with Houston's issues. And I'm not sold on Sam Darnold just because he's had 2 pretty good games. I don't see this. I see this game easily being in the low 20s for the winner, or maybe in the mid 20s. I don't think Houston's going to score more than a couple touchdowns.
And if Carolina gets out to a lead, they're just going to give the ball to Christian McCaffrey over and over and over again and shorten the game. And so that's also a good call. If you want to tease the Panthers down to a -2 and the total up to a 49, you may be looking pretty good tonight too. Devin, what's your take here on Thursday Night Football?
Yeah, this is a rough game for the Texans. I mean, you already lose your starting quarterback. You have a rookie playing. So it's going to be important for them to run the football. So I think the game is going to be a relatively quick game, in my opinion. Because for Carolina, you want to obviously look good offensively, but once you get out to a lead, it's pretty much sitting on the ball and just trying to get out there healthy as possible. Because Thursday night games have been brutal in terms of injuries already, just from last week's game. So, for the game, I think the Texans can keep it competitive through the first 3 quarters. I think Carolina eventually pulls away late in the game, scores a touchdown or 2, and pretty much just sits on the ball. But I think the Texans have a chance to cover the spread. I think, Thursday night football is always sloppy football. You really don't see teams dominate too often. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans like backdoor covered or something like that. But I think
we're all in trouble now.
He's called it. Yeah, 8 points is a lot of points for a road team in the NFL. It just is. Hey, if you want to get all of our insights and all of our picks and line movements and all of those sorts of things, check out our newsletter. You can sign up at NOLA.com/odds. And if you do, not only will you get the newsletter, you're automatically entered for a $250 cash card giveaway. So NOLA.com/odds. Make sure you're signing up for our odds and ends newsletter, and you'll get a replay of this show, our shows on Monday, our fantasy show on Wednesday, and all the other stuff. Jim Derry's NFL picks, sure to hit. You're due, Jim. You're due.
Actually, didn't have that bad of a week with my picks. It was the big Bucks thing that messed me up. So
just
I was
do a
over
better job
500.
prioritizing. Yeah,
I was over 500 against the spread, and I was well over 500 with my over/under. Again, I really think I should just pick those for the second straight week. I was 11-5 with my over and under. So,
hey, maybe if you're the over/under man, they pay just as well. The other thing that we've got going on is our Cashin in with Carville contest, and talked to James Carville this morning. You can make your picks against him. He picks 6 games every week, 3 college games, 3 NFL games, and then he automatically will pick LSU and the Saints against the spread as a loyal Louisianan. So you can go to NOLA.com/cashin to play against James Carville. And now for James's picks this week, as well as his thoughts on all things football in Louisiana, here is this week's Cashin' In with Carville. Well, welcome to this week's edition of Cashin' In with Carville. I'm Zach Ewing, along with the man himself, James Carville. The Bayou algorithm is working strong and maybe stronger than ever, James.
Well, we went from 5-1 to 4-2, so we're 9-3 on the year. But let me caution everybody: that which can't continue won't. This can't continue. So have fun. Factor the picks in, but don't get yourself into trouble here.
One of these weeks, that nose is going to fall below the level of the water. I'm afraid.
Oh, if anybody my age that's been around sports gambling as long as I have, we're very realistic people. But when we get a little streak, we like to have fun with it.
You take advantage of them while you can. So
yeah,
you're 11-5 on the season, 9-3 in the picks that you've made, plus 2-2 on the automatic LSU and Saints picks. We have only one competitor in Cashin' In with Carville who's even with you for the month of September. So we'll see if those readers can make up some ground on you. Let's get started with the Bayou Bengals, with LSU. Kind of a bounce back win last week. They're at Mississippi State this week. What are your thoughts on LSU?
Well, like I said, I don't pick against them. If I were, this is not an official pick, I think they're going to do pretty good.
All right.
They got a lot. Mississippi State just beat the snot out of them last year. State went to Memphis, didn't do that well. Maybe Memphis a little better than we normally think. But I think they got a lot of motivation. And if it all comes down to me is getting the people. If we get people back on the offensive line and they can do something, then we got a chance to to win 10 games this year. I mean, that's the deal.
Absolutely. The schedule's difficult, little bit of a revenge factor this week. So again, Carville's automatic pick always going to be LSU. He's a Louisianan through and through, but that's his take on the game. So let's go to the other college games. This one's in Chicago at Soldier Field. Notre Dame taking on Wisconsin. This is a high noon kickoff Eastern time, and Wisconsin is 6.5-point chalk.
Yeah, college football needs more of these kind of games, and they have them, and they're getting more, and they need to continue to have them. I love these big neutral site games, and I'm 6.5. I'll take Notre Dame.
All right, we'll take it.
That's a lot of points, and Notre Dame. I don't think they're like Alabama good, but neither is anybody else. But it's not bad at all. I think they're
Irish are undefeated.
Yeah, I'm comparable team. Wisconsin, not world beater. They got beat by Penn State at home.
That's right. And this is a neutral site, 6.5 points. So we're taking the points there. Another neutral site game. This one at Jerry World, Jerry Jones Palace in Arlington, Arkansas, taking on Texas A&M. Really the big SEC game of the week here. A&M is a 5.5-point favorite. They had their backup quarterback starting for the past couple of weeks after the starter got hurt. Where are we going with A&M minus 5.5? Dogs barking.
Dogs barking. Dogs are barking everywhere this week.
All right. Dogs barking and hogs snorting, and we're going with the Razorbacks.
You know, it was an impressive win they had over Texas. It's still early to, you know, only early precincts have come in here, but boy, it was a promising early precinct.
And then finally, another SEC game. It's a little bit of a light slate in college football this weekend. So we went to Tennessee, Florida, a traditional rivalry game. Supposed to be a mismatch. Line opened around 20. It's ticked down. It's Florida minus 19.5 at the Swamp against Tennessee.
All right. Just want to make a point. Alabama, LSU, and the SEC. So when they went into divisions, they said, but every team has to have a rival. All right. So they picked the rival for you. Of course, the traditional rival for Alabama is Tennessee. I can barely remember getting up in the morning to watch this wonderful Alabama-Tennessee game, but okay, that's their traditional rival. Our traditional rival we play every year is Florida. How many times has Tennessee beat Florida in this century? In this century?
Maybe twice.
I think once, but
yeah.
it might be twice. How can they with a straight face saying that they're trying to have an equitable schedule when we have to play Florida every year, which by the way is a great rivalry. We're some of the greatest games I've ever seen in LSU Florida, but we've lost some of them. Alabama Tennessee can't stay on the same field with Florida generally, but at 19.5.
Taking Tennessee with the points. All right, dogs barking again.
In Florida gave everything they had. They were down 21-3 from Alabama. Remember, we had Alabama, I thought, at a rocking chair game. And we didn't cover, we barely won.
Florida came back strong. Let me ask you this. When Texas and Oklahoma join the SEC, do you like the 14 pod system? Do you think they should go to 8-team divisions? Should they reconfigure it? What's your opinion?
You know, I read about the pod system, and I kind of like it. You know, since the idea is you can't do it perfectly, but the scheduling they have now, particularly with us, I mean, Florida is, or maybe now Georgia has been, you know, but over the years, Florida's probably traditionally been the best team in the East. Of course, Auburn, the other big Alabama rivals, they can Georgia every year. I mean, it's just, they're so obvious the way that they manipulate everything. It's just a sense in Birmingham, like people can't see this dude. You think we don't know what you're doing? And they all go to the same clubs and eat at the same dinners and invest in the same buildings and, you know, buy cars from each other, and the kids all go to school together. I mean, it's the greatest rigged deal you can imagine, Alabama and SEC, but we'll put that aside. Yeah, I think a pod system could work pretty equitably. And, you know, Coach Saban wants to do this, and a lot of conference mucky mucks, and I'm not even sure LSU's on board. They said, let's play 10 conference games.
It sure would be fun. We'd have a lot of good games.
And the argument is we always get somebody in the playoff. It's why if the idea is to get a conference member, you know, Florida's won it twice, but we've won it 3 times. Alabama won it 8 times. Auburn's even won it. But our pod would be, what would our pod be?
That's the big question. I mean, I don't think they'd put LSU with Arkansas and the Mississippi schools, then not make them play a traditional power. And maybe they put them with Texas A&M.
They'd shaft us. They'd put us with Texas A&M, Texas, and, you know, Georgia or something. Believe it, they're working overtime figuring out how to give us the shaft. I can promise you.
Real quick, we'll pick the Band-Aid on the Saints. As good as their week 1 performance was, week 2 was dreary.
You know, you're right. I watched the first game. I don't know if I honestly, I just never seen a team play a more perfect game than we played in Jacksonville. And we got moved around in Charlotte. I mean, we couldn't do it. You know, we couldn't do anything. And we're gonna learn what kind of team we have, because you go to Boston and fool around with Bill Belichick. You better. I hope they bring whatever they call it, A game. They're gonna need it. But Peyton is just such a good coach, and when he's focused and preparing for a game, there's nobody in the league better than him.
9-2 in his last 11 games.
By the way, it's a little bit different topic. Did you read that story on the Pelicans in the NOLA.com? That was a great story. God,
Christian Clark doing work. Yeah, he exposed David Griffin.
Right, but he's a hell of a reporter.
He's a good
guy. Everybody thought that David Griffin was the savior, man. He came in he was the man with the golden reputation. Maybe he can get it. I guess he get another season. They got to do well.
Last chance there. And Christian, by the way, a fellow Mizzou journalism grad like myself, so I have to shout him out there. Let's get to your NFL picks, James. At noon on Sunday, Chargers at Kansas City. Kansas City 6.5-point favorite here, looking to bounce back from their first loss. More dogs.
More dogs.
Take the Chargers. Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, and that offense. Game of the week. 3:25 p.m. Central Time out in LA. Bucks at Rams. Could be a preview of the NFC Championship. Saints may have something to say about that. Somebody else may. But right now, the Bucks are -1 at the Rams.
I'm going to do something uncharacteristic this week. I'm going to take a -1 favorite.
All right, we got one favorite. We had to pick one. And then finally, the Sunday night football game. Green Bay catching 3.5 out at the Bay against the 49ers.
I think that the Saints game was not who they are. And I think we're going to see who they are. And I'm taking another dog.
Taking the Packers and saying the Saints win over the Packers is that much better. So just to recap, we have 5 underdog picks here. Notre Dame over Wisconsin with the points, Arkansas with the points over A&M, Tennessee over Florida, the Chargers over the Chiefs, and the Packers over the Niners, and the one favorite, just the 1-point favorite, the Buccaneers beating the Rams. James Carville, we appreciate it. He's all decked out for the game on Saturday morning in Starkville.
Oh yeah, I think I'm looking for us to execute really well. I think everybody knows what's at stake here. Everybody knows what happened last year. I think the team wants to not just prove it to its fans, but wants to prove it to itself that that's not who we are. I'm optimistic. I'm not picking them because I don't pick LSU as such, but I think there's reason to be optimistic here.
Maybe not a pick, but a wink. So, James Carville, we thank you for your time, and we'll see you next week.
Absolutely. You bet.
And so that's cashing in with Carville for week number 3. And just to recap James's picks, these are the ones you'll be trying to beat. He's 11-5, by the way. Somebody's got to beat him. I mean, we got prizes to give away, but you got to beat James Carville. So Carville's picks, and again, he loved the dogs barking. He had Notre Dame +6.5, Arkansas +5.5, Tennessee +19.5. He did hint that he would have taken LSU -2.5 if he were picking. But again, that's an automatic pick for him. And then in the NFL, he took the Chargers +6.5, Bucks -1, and the Packers +3.5. So of the 6 picks, he took 5 dogs. The only favorite he took was the Bucks -1 out in LA. So again, NOLA.com/cashing-in, and you can pick against James Carville. And if you beat him for the month, a monthly prize and also season-long prizes for our top finishers at the end of football season. Speaking of LSU, they are in Stark Vegas this weekend, Starkville, Mississippi, where the cowbells will be ringing, and Mike Leach is going to try to throw just as many wide open passes, or design just as many wide open passes as he did against the Tigers last year. LSU 2.5-point favorite. First of all, Jim, were you surprised to see LSU come in as a favorite here?
In fact, I was surprised it was as low as it is. Mississippi State lost to Memphis. And look, I think the only reason why it is as low as it is because the odds makers were looking at, or the lines makers were looking at what happened last year. So I think that LSU is going to be watching film from that game last year all week long and have been. So that will certainly play in. And I'm just going to jump right in and take LSU here because I really think LSU is going to have a great performance. I liked what I saw last week. I don't want to put too much stock on last week's performance, but they looked like a much better team and one that is a little bit more prepared. The possibility of the return of John Emery will help if he comes back. We heard about that from Coach O yesterday, that he could possibly be ready for this game. And I just think LSU is going to come out firing. I know it's in Starkville, but Mississippi State's not going to throw for 600 yards again. Mike Leach or no Mike Leach. But I'm thinking they're going to be fired up and ready to play. And they have to win these kinds of games to get themselves in position. I mean, we know LSU's not an SEC championship type team, but to be in line to have a decent record, to get to that 7 or 8 wins like they want at the minimum to get Coach O off the hot seat, they have to win this kind of game.
Yeah, it's two things worry me if I'm an LSU backer, and one is they're just plain and simple inconsistent. I mean, they just have trouble stringing together 2 straight good performances in a row. They played real well last week. Will it be the same this week? The other thing that worries me is I feel like Mississippi State's a little bit undervalued. I know they lost to Memphis. That was a weird game. I mean, there was a weird punt return touchdown in that game for Memphis. There was a couple of things that went late against Mississippi State. The scoreboard is what it is, but from a betting perspective, if we're trying to predict, I look at that more like Mississippi State took care of business. They played well enough to win. It just didn't happen on the field. So I think they're a little bit undervalued. They're at home, obviously. And then Mike Leach's scheme, obviously the defensive coaches are different. It gave LSU absolute fits last year. They never did switch to a zone, which is death against Mike Leach and the air raid. You figure they're going to play some zone this year, but I look at all those coverage busts they had against UCLA, and you just wonder if the problem is truly fixed. So I actually haven't even made a pick on this game yet. I'm leaning toward the Bulldogs, but it'll be in tomorrow morning's Advocate and Times-Picayune, and we have our grid of all of our picks. But Devin, how about you? I mean, clarify this for us. Since you're red hot, who's going to win this game tomorrow?
I think LSU wins the game. I think Mississippi State, while they played well against Memphis, I kind of look at their first week's performance, and they played pretty rough there. So I know LSU's been an inconsistent team, but so has Mississippi State. And I don't know if I trust them enough to make plays when the game gets tight. They've been kind of up and down all year long already. And, they have some issues in pass protection. So I think LSU can take advantage of that and be able to get to the quarterback and make some plays there and make some plays in the back end. I just feel like this secondary is playing a little bit better, and then the linebacking crew as well. So I think that will be the key, obviously, to the game. But I think LSU wins and covers on Saturday, and I think they win by double digits.
Wow. All right. Well, the Oracle has spoken, so let's write it down. I do think it's a difficult game to pick. None of us chose it in big bucks. I don't like the game from a gambling perspective, just because, like I said, it's unpredictable. I don't, if anything, the total was, can we throw that slide back on? I think the total was 56.5. Maybe it goes over. I mean, 56.5, and you just feel like Mississippi State's going to catch LSU in coverage a couple times, and then LSU with that high tempo offense we saw last week against Central Michigan, you could easily see a game 31-28, 35-31. I mean, I think all of those things, even if it's a double-digit game like Devin suggested, maybe a 38-27. I mean, all of those things seem like they're well over the total to me. So maybe I'm leaning the over in this one.
Zach, I will say this. You asked me if I was surprised about the line. So I was really surprised the over-under was that low. And that makes me want to take the under, because anytime a line seems weird one way, I mean, normally if I had to predict, I would have thought it would be in the mid-60s. And so and then I would be more inclined to take the over. But I'm going with the lines makers here. If they think it's going to be this low, there's a reason behind it. And I would be tempted to take the under, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
because of that.
I say it all the time. When the odds makers want you to zig, you got to zag. Sometimes that's the key to this. Is you've got to learn when to go against instinct and say, wait a second. So it does seem low to me too, and that's a good point. Moving on to the other local team on Sunday at noon, the Saints take on the Patriots. And the Patriots are 3-point favorites, a low total of only 42 here, relatively low for the NFL. And again, you want to talk about inconsistency. We talked about this on Monday, Jim, but the Saints go from looking like the best team in the NFL in week 1 to one of the worst teams in the NFL in week 2. Now a tough assignment in Foxborough. It's tough to know what to make of this either.
Yeah, I've talked about this throughout the week. I've got a lot of social media, quote unquote, love. I talked on my Datitude podcast. It was a weird game. But all the emotion, and we talked about the emotion before the game and whether it would play a role. I didn't think it would play as big a role as it would play. The highest of highs against Green Bay. They expended every bit of energy they had. Then they have 7 or 8 coaches get COVID. And then they have to go back from Dallas, which isn't their home, and fly out to Carolina. I think it's going to be a different game this week, and which kind of contradicts what I'm saying because they still have to go back to Dallas and fly out again. But they're going home after this game. They're coming home after this game, and I think that Sean Payton is usually really good after losses like this and getting his team ready to play. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how they react, and especially Jameis Winston, who had the worst game of his career. It's well documented. He had a worse passer rating than Drew Brees had in any of his 231 starts, regular season and postseason, by 10 points. But it was also the worst performance of Jameis Winston's career as well in 71 starts. So I think he's going to play much better, and they got to let him fly a little bit. They got to let him loose. And I know that's would cause part of his 30 INTs a couple years ago. But let the kid go, and I think he can play. And I think we're going to see that on Sunday.
Yeah, and by the way, the Patriots they beat the Jets last week. Week 1, they lost to Miami, who turned around and got thumped by Buffalo. I know Bill Belichick's got all the rings that you could possibly have, but this doesn't look like a vintage New England team either. The Saints are getting 6, I think, right? Yeah. The Saints are getting a little healthier. They still are not going to have Quan Alexander. I think Eric McCoy was limited in practice yesterday, but they should get Marshawn Lattimore back. That's going to help. And they get CJ Gardner-Johnson back, and I believe Marcus Davenport was back practicing. So they are getting healthier. That was one thing that honestly, maybe we were a little arrogant in taking the Saints last week and say, it doesn't seem to matter with this team. They get injuries and they just seem to plug holes as good as any team in the NFL. Well, there's a limit to all of that. But they are getting a little bit healthier this week. Devin, -3 for New England. What's your take here?
I would stay far away from touching that game. I think I would take the under if I took anything in this game, just because both offenses are very methodical in their approach. They're not big play, scoring a couple of, plays type of team. So I definitely wouldn't touch the game in terms of that. I do think that the Saints play much better than they did last week. I mean, it's hard. It will be hard not to at that point. And, I think Sean Payton has something to prove against, one of the premier NFL coaches. Whenever he's playing up against, one of the top coaches in the NFL, he has a point to prove that, I'm still one of the better play callers and coaches around. So I think the game will be called much better in the Saints' favor. I think they'll put Jameis Winston in less predictable situations and try to keep teams off balance. You might see Taysom Hill a little bit more too, just run the football to kind of take the pressure off of Jameis and the offense and the offensive line as well. Because, Bill Belichick and their defense are going to try and test and see if the Saints fix those issues they had a week ago with the offensive line. But I think this is a game the Saints can pull out. I think it's one of those field goal to win it type of games where it really is just going to come down to the fourth quarter, which team has the ball last and can pull it out. But I like the Saints' chances this week. I know they're in Foxborough, they played very well at home, but they do have a rookie quarterback, so you got to keep that in mind. And if the Saints can get some of the pressure they got in the second half against Carolina, I think they can make him make some mistakes.
Defense has to get off the field, plain and simple, because that was a big problem against Carolina. The offense had so limited opportunities that I think Jameis was pressing by the time they got the ball late in the second quarter and were already down 10 points. And then a bad half turned into disaster. But we mentioned this a couple weeks ago when they beat Green Bay. Sean Payton 9-2 as an underdog, straight up in his last 11 chances as a dog. That's going back 4 years. So the Saints tend to play very well as an underdog. We'll see if that holds true again this week. Let's take a look at big bucks real quick, looking back at last week, and this is Devin's favorite part of the show, I'm sure. Plus 190. Plus 190. I'm just going to go out on a limb right now and say that is the biggest margin, plus or minus, we will see all season long by any of us. We're only betting about $200 a week, so $190 ahead. And not Devin. Not only were you picking these games against the spread, Fresno State won outright. I think you had Utah State as a dog. They won outright. Some of your NFL picks won as outright. I mean, these picks were, as James Carville said, they're rocking chair picks. You just made them and you sat back and watched with a grin on your face.
Yeah, it was surprising. I knew Fresno State was gonna play UCLA tough. I mean, they played Oregon tough a couple weeks ago. I didn't think they were gonna straight up win the game. That was a surprise and a wild game on Saturday night. But I felt Utah State had a pretty good chance against Air Force. That game was also one that looked like it was going to get out of hand because I think Air Force went up by a couple touchdowns in the third or early fourth quarter. So there was a couple games. And like I said, we talked about beforehand, the UConn Army game. That got way out of hand in the first half. And I thought that was going to be one of those ones that got out of hand quick too. But everything just came together. I took the Giants on Thursday Night Football last week. I just felt like they were going to win, and they probably should have won the game before they just threw it away pretty much. But they did end up covering. So it was accumulation of some luck this week for sure, especially in some of those games that went down to the wire or, got a backdoor cover at the end. But I couldn't have expected to pretty much nail almost all the picks.
No, that's pretty ridiculous. Jim, we're going to see here in a minute when we look at your week 3 picks. You shifted away from college football because that was hurting you more than it was helping you.
There's no question. I've been awful with college picks, so obviously I have to go and do more research on that end. Look, I had a good week with NFL for the most part. I think I was 8-7-1 in my picks column, which isn't fantastic, but again, I got to do more with over-unders, and I only have one of those in my big bucks picks this week. But I really like my picks this week. So -1. I'm sorry if I cost you a pack of gum last week. So look, email me at Derry at the Advocate, and I will send you a voucher for a pack of spearmint gum, and we're good.
Trident spearmint. Okay, I'm going to hold you to that.
You got it. You got it.
All right. So, but we're going to look to get Jim in the positives this week. He was a big negative the first week, basically broke even here. I'm sure he'll rebound with his NFL-only strategy. As for me, Stanford at Vandy, I never understood that line. And Stanford they turned it over on 4th and goal at the 1 in the first half, and you think, oh no, that's the type of thing that as a double-digit favorite kills you. And they still ended up covering easily. I think Vandy had a late touchdown to get it back to 18, but it was a 25-point game for most of the fourth quarter. So easy cover there, and then. An example of where sometimes you zig when the books want you to zag didn't work. I thought Florida State, a couple weeks ago, this would have been a great line. I'm going to take advantage of it. And Florida State's a mess. Won't touch the Seminoles again. So lesson learned there. Let's move on to week 3, big bucks picks. Pay attention here. If you pay attention to one slide, you've got to pay attention to the one right after this when it's Devin's picks, because that's what's going to win you money, okay? But first of all, our best bet for each of us, Devin went with Wyoming, -30 against UConn, expecting the Huskies to get boat raced again. And I went with Texas A&M. I think Arkansas is overvalued. I know they beat Texas, but I think people are thinking about that and not about how good that A&M defense is. And the one I want to point out here is Jim taking the Seahawks on the road to go to a desperate Minnesota team and win.
Well, you're sure to win your pick because I love Arkansas. So and it's a college, in college games, we know how that works. So you're like 99% to win. So everybody take Texas A&M this week. I love Seattle this week. In fact, it might be my favorite play of the entire season. If you look ahead to their upcoming schedule, they got Frisco, the Rams, they play the Saints. I think they got the Steelers or somebody in there. So if there was such a thing at 1-1 as must win, they've got to beat what I consider to be a subpar Minnesota team. Mike Zimmer is way more on the hot seat than maybe any other coach in the NFL right now. He is in deep trouble because they are staring 0-3 in the face. And normally I would say teams backed in a corner like Minnesota with the talent they have, I like the Vikings, but both of these teams are desperate. I'm going to take Seattle because I think Russell Wilson is going to come out smoking against what has been an absolutely awful Vikings defense, especially in the secondary. I think he's going to throw all over them. If you're playing some kind of fantasy thing this week, Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett are probably pretty good picks.
Yeah, the Vikings have been awful defensively. Devin has made a killing on the Mountain West and the MAC. And this Wyoming game is a Mountain West game. I know you scout those conferences on the as sort of a side gig. What do you see in Wyoming that makes you think that they're going to have that easy of a time with UConn?
Well, just from kind of their balance all year long, like they took down a Ball State team by 33 that I thought was coming in was pretty good. That's why I picked them against Penn State a few weeks ago, and they beat them by 33. I know they had a close game against Northern Illinois, but UConn I don't know, man. They just struggle offensively scoring the football, and Wyoming has had a pretty good defense up to this point. And I just see them turning the ball over, and Wyoming likes to play power football. So they're going to keep the clock moving throughout the game and really run down that time. So I think Wyoming gets out to the big lead, and hopefully they hang on and I don't get backdoored this week after last
It would only be fair, but hey, let's just hope you have more good ones than bad ones. Devin, let's take a look at the rest of your picks here. What else sticks out to you? Oh, there we go. Yeah, get the big number up there, the 2,200 already up more than $200 for up 10%, put it that way, over this is not real money, but up more than 10% over what we started with. What else sticks out to you? A lot of college games for you this week, and then down in the NFL, you have the Dolphins and the Falcons as road dogs.
Yeah, so I know that the Raiders have been really, really good this year, but I feel like they're in for a letdown, which is why I picked Miami plus 4.5 against Vegas. I just think that they're going to have one of those games where they don't look as good as they have the last few weeks. I think the Raiders are generally a different team from what they are in the past. But I think when you look at just how after the first couple of weeks they start to kind of not play as consistent, I think that's where that can happen. So that's why I picked Miami. I know they have a backup quarterback playing Jacoby Brissett, but I really think that they look much better this week. It's hard not to after they got pretty much blown off the field against Buffalo. So that's why I picked them there. And then looking at the Notre Dame Wisconsin game, I understand that Wisconsin's defense is really good, but I haven't been impressed with their offense. They haven't really showed me much in the first couple of weeks that lead me to believe they'll beat Notre Dame by more than 6.5 points. I know Notre Dame has been a bit overrated to this point. They play pretty much everyone close, but in a game that Notre Dame quarterback Jack Cohn is playing his former team, you kind of keep that in mind. And although they've been inconsistent, they have I think the better talent than Wisconsin. So I think that's one of those field goal type of games. I would not expect either team to win by more than 3 or 4 points in that one. So that's why I picked Notre Dame, Wisconsin, and then the Falcons and Giants. It just feels like that is just a line that I would not trust with the Giants. Having them as 3-point favorites. I know the Falcons had their struggles, but I mean the Giants have had their struggles as well. And I think the Falcons are going to get their offense figured out. They're still learning kind of a new system, starting to get Kyle Pitts more involved too. Cordero Patterson had a really good game as well. So I think their offense is going to be able to score, and I just don't trust the Giants enough to make enough plays to end up winning the game, especially after last week's game against Washington when they had multiple chances to win the game. So those are some of my thinking and some of those picks. And then finally, the West Virginia-Oklahoma game. Oklahoma has just been way too inconsistent for my liking. And, West Virginia has played really good football. They beat Virginia Tech last week when, a lot of people expected, Virginia Tech to win that game, but West Virginia pulled it out. So I think West Virginia is a much better football team than odds makers are giving them credit for.
Jim, should we just like pause for 30 seconds and let people scratch the rest of these down real quick, just so everybody can make
I'm trying to take a deep breath before you put my number up on the screen.
All right, those are Devin's picks. Jim, as we mentioned, went away from college. Like you said, your NFL numbers have been fine this year. It's the college numbers that have hurt you. And so, hey, don't take any college games. Smart strategy. The one you'll see here, you took the Rams on the money line, so that's a little better odds. So you could cash in a couple of extra dollars there instead of just the 55 to win 50. But what else sticks out to you on this week's slate?
Well, first off, Devin's golden with Notre Dame because I don't see them. I think they're gonna struggle. I mean, I didn't put it on my big bucks picks, but I almost did, and I'm glad I didn't. Now that Devin has Notre Dame, but
what's going to happen is now this will be the week your college picks are all right.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see what happens. But I've already talked about Seattle. That's my big play, and the Rams are pretty close. Look, everybody loves Tampa Bay this week. They've had 2 home games, getting their Super Bowl ceremony, getting their rings or whatever, floating the banner, having the crowd going crazy in the ship. Now they're going to play a real team across the country on the road. I get that it is Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski and everybody else, but the Rams obviously have an outstanding defense and an outstanding pass rush, and maybe the best defensive player in football. So it's going to be a whole different road for the Bucs, and I still think the Rams are the best team in the NFC. We'll find out pretty soon, but I love the Rams here. That's why I took the money line. Why give up the juice when just for an extra point and a half you can just take the Rams to win straight up, and I love that. Vegas. When I looked at it, it was 3.5. I see Devin saw it was 4.5, and that's because Joe Public, which scares me on this game, and I might want to take that down a notch. But look, Miami has not been able to run the football. Vegas has played outstanding defense. They stopped Najee Harris for the most part last week. And look, at some point, Derek Carr has the most passing yards in the NFL right now, over 800. At some point in the season, I know it's still early, but you are what your record and your stats say you are, and it says that Vegas is a pretty good team. So I think Vegas is at home. I mean, I'm sorry, they're playing at Miami, but I still think with all the troubles that Miami has, with Tua being out, or if he plays, he's going to have to rub his ribs every now and then. But, and then the other thing that sticks out, the big primetime game, Green Bay and San Francisco, Packers getting 3.5. Aaron Rodgers is 8-0 straight up in his last 8 primetime games. I love the Packers here. People still down on him from that shellacking they took from the Saints, but that's one of my favorite plays. I wish I would have put a little bit more on it. And then lastly, am I crazy? Jacksonville +7 in Arizona. I think the Cardinals are due for a little bit of a letdown. And Jacksonville, everyone's going to be on Arizona. This is one of those games. I only put 22 on it because I obviously don't trust the Jags, but when everybody's on one side, I love going the other way for the most part. And in this case, Jacksonville, I think this spread's probably going to be 7.5 or 8 by the time the game starts. So I would wait until Sunday. But I expect them to play a little better. And I would think that I think the over-under was in the ballpark of 50-ish. I'd have to look again. But I kind of like the under in that one.
All right. So, you're either going to look like the smartest man in the room, or people are going to wonder what you were doing taking Jacksonville, because that one just smells like a blowout. My big bucks picks includes the other way. I've taken Arizona -7 against Jacksonville, and I think you're right. I think if you want the Cardinals, you get them early in the week because that number is going to become 7.5 or 8. I talked about Texas A&M. I think that defense is just better than people give it credit for. That could be a very low-scoring game, but I just don't think Arkansas will move the ball much at all. The rest of the college picks here, I'm taking teams I think are still undervalued. Maryland with Talua Tungavaloa, Tua's younger brother, is the quarterback there, and people forget about that team, but they're 3-0 and looking real good. I think they can cover against Kent State. Took the Ragin' Cajuns at Georgia Southern. Don't understand that line. The Ragin' Cajuns should win that game by more than 2 touchdowns. And then one that really sticks out to me is Washington. And I know everybody gave up on them. They lost to Montana. They got beat bad in Ann Arbor by Michigan. Then they brought back a running back, Sean McGrew, and they played Arkansas State. And Arkansas State, it's a Sun Belt team, but they're not a terrible team. They're usually toward the top of the Sun Belt. And all of a sudden, Washington found some offense. Sean McGrew only had 6 carries, but 2 of them went for touchdowns. He's They seem to have found an offensive spark. And I really think I picked Washington to win the Pac-12 early in the season at plus 400. And after the first 2 weeks, that looked idiotic. And maybe it still is. Oregon's very good. But I still think Washington's going to rebound and be one of those teams that, because of those first 2 weeks, there's going to be value on them here for the next several weeks. And we'll see what they can do in Berkeley. And then the NFL, Jim, maybe we got a lot of opposite picks here. So maybe I ought to tread carefully because you're the man who knows the NFL. But the Bengals at Pittsburgh with 3.5, and yesterday the line was at 3.5. It may have moved. Again, if you want to bet on Pittsburgh, wait and see. You might be able to get a 3. Ben Roethlisberger, like you said, if he's not, he may play, but that injury is nothing to be messing around with. It said it hurts for him to get up and it hurts for him to twist his body. And I mean, what are we doing here if that's going to be a problem? And I think Cincinnati is good enough offensively to take advantage of that, especially getting 3.5. And then I'm with Devin. I just feel like one of these weeks Atlanta is going to explode and make us. We keep trying to figure out what the heck the Falcons are doing. They should be better than this. They should be better than this. One of these weeks they're going to win some game by 30 or 40 points. And I actually wouldn't mind them on the money line taking on the Giants because it's going to happen sooner or later. And then the last one, I took Tampa Bay. I think quite simply Tampa Bay is the better team. I think they're more ready for a spotlight game like this. I think the Rams, they're at home. From what I've seen on TV, that's a little bit of an artificial atmosphere there. I don't see that as a great home field advantage, other than the fact that Tampa Bay's got a long way to travel. And I just think Tampa Bay's the better team. So if I'm only laying a point, I'll go ahead and take my chances with the Bucs. So that's big bucks. Speaking of bucks for the week, and if you want to play, if you want to pick games. You can't pick any game you want like we can, but we do have 8 games for you to pick, including LSU and the Saints. You can play Cashin in with Carville, pick against James Carville, win monthly prizes if you beat him. Our top 3 finishers, regardless of whether they beat James, will win season-long prizes. You can enter at NOLA.com/cashin-in. It's not too late to play the season-long game. You do get to drop your 2 lowest scores, so if you haven't played yet, you can still sign up. The game will go for 19 weeks. You only have to submit 17 scores. So you got zeros these first 2 weeks, but you can still play. You can still win prizes. And then, of course, each month you can beat James Carville to win a prize. So log on NOLA.com/cashin-in. And that will just about do it for us. Again, the weekend begins with Panthers and Texans tonight. Let's flash that up one more time. The Panthers are 8-point favorites against the Texans with an over-under of 43, 7:20 p.m. tonight on the NFL Network. That will kickstart the weekend. I want to say there's also a college game tonight. I'm going off of memory, Marshall and App State maybe, but 2 pretty good teams actually if the college game is more of your thing. Guys, having said that, let's go down one final thought for the weekend, what you're hoping to learn this weekend, Devin Jackson.
I guess I'm looking forward to the Bucs and Rams game. See which team is poised to make the NFC Championship game. Obviously, I think both teams have a long way to go. I think Tampa's defense is a little bit overvalued in terms of how good they are. The front seven's really good, but the secondary has some issues. So I think the Rams will take advantage of some of that. But I just wonder in the fourth quarter, with the Bucs driving, are the Rams going to be able to make enough stops to win the game? So I think that will be definitely the game of the weekend for the NFL. College-wise, I don't see too many marquee matchups this week. I know Texas A&M, Arkansas plays, but I'm with you. I think Texas A&M wins that game pretty easily. But other than that, that's definitely the biggest thing on my mind in terms of NFL. See which team is between the Bucs and Rams poised to make a late run this year.
Winner may have an inside track to the number 1 seed in the NFC, along with possibly the 49ers, who are 2-0, or the Cardinals. I mean, who knows what could happen. Jim, how about you? A quick thought on the weekend to come.
Before I give you my quick thought, my good friend who doesn't know how to pick a seat just told me he likes Carolina, so that means take Houston. So maybe we're all in trouble there. No, I'm just kidding. What I'm looking forward to, two quick things. One, I want to see what we're gonna find out a lot about LSU this weekend. If they lay an egg against Mississippi State, I don't think they're going to come back like they came back last year. I think it's going to be a really long season, and I think they're in big trouble if they lose this game. They're going to have lots of trouble with the Auburns and the Floridas of the world, and even Kentucky, who follows Mississippi State. So it's going to be interesting there. And then in the NFL, like last week, we had just an unbelievable late window of games, and then the Sunday night game, and then even the Monday night game for about 3 quarters was outstanding. I think we're going to have that again this weekend, and I am really looking forward to that. Not just Tampa Bay and the Rams, but I want to see, is Green Bay the team that played in the second half against Monday night, or are they closer to the team that got blown up at the Saints? And is Aaron Rodgers really back? So we'll find out a lot more of that one against San Francisco on Sunday night.
Now, there's a ton of great NFL games. Like Devin said, it's not a great college slate, but one thing I'm looking forward to is seeing most of the SEC. If they haven't already played a conference game, they're playing their first one this weekend. I think Auburn might be the only team that won't have played a conference game after this weekend. There might be one more, but everybody kind of gets into SEC play, and we're pretty much in SEC play the rest of the way. So it's a great weekend if you're an SEC football fan. And then, as we mentioned, the big NFL games. And I'm looking forward to the Saints, too. I mean, this is a team, they could not have been more different between week 1 and week 2. So who are they going forward? I think we begin to find out this Sunday. I think we'll get a performance somewhere in between week 1 and week 2, but we'll see which one it's closer to. Want to remind you too.
One quick thing, Zach, before we close. I want to say, y'all have been great. Everybody's been great about promoting my Datitude podcast, but I have a great show tomorrow. I'm reunited with old buddy Dave DeCorbier, who called D Squared on 1280 AM. We used to be together for 3 or 4 years doing a Friday segment, and so he's got a lot of Datitude. And we recorded his segment earlier this morning. Is outstanding. So check that out. You might want to listen to it. He's got some interesting opinions.
You stole my thunder. I was just about to say, if you sign up for our newsletter, among other things, Jim Derry's Datitude podcast is brand new every Tuesday and Friday. You'll also get recaps of our shows in case you missed them live. You'll get Cashin with Carville. You'll get all the links to all of our stories about LSU and the Saints. It's just a great way to keep up with things. Sports betting is around the corner. I expect we may have some news for you on that front within the next week. So make sure you're signed up, NOLA.com/odds. If you do it today, you get entered to win a $250 cash card. So even more incentive, NOLA.com/odds. Put in your email address. That's all you got to do. You're entered and you'll get it in your inbox every morning. So that has been At the Book for this week, Thursday, September the 23rd. Devin Jackson, Jim Derry, and myself, Zach Ewing. Thanks for joining us, everybody.